Arrival. The sleek diplomatic shuttle glided through the whirling currents of hyperspace, carrying Ambassador Lena Sorensen towards the glittering spires of Galactic Hub Station. Earth's first representative to the stars cut an imposing figure, brilliant, bold, and unflinching in her commitment to her people. As swirling streaks of stardust whipped past the viewport, the ambassador's thoughts raced with the gravity of her mission. She was here to navigate Earth's entry into the Interstellar Alliance, to guide her homeworld into the galactic community that had so recently erupted into their orbit in fire and fury. The attack had been as brutal as it was unprovoked, and only through desperate ingenuity and the indomitable human spirit had they endured. But now the same species that had brought humanity to the brink of extinction sat on the other side of the negotiating table. The irony was not lost on Lena, that the aggressors who had underestimated Earth now needed to accept them as equals in order to preserve stability. Her gaze hardened with resolve. She would ensure that Earth took its rightful place among the stars, no matter the cost. The shuttle shuddered as it decelerated into Union space, and Lena checked her reflection one last time. The formal attire felt foreign. Earth had not had use for such pomp in the years since the invasion. But this was a game of shadows and daggers, where every gesture carried weight. She smoothed down the ceremonial sash, its vibrant crimson a stark reminder of the blood spilled to bring them to this moment. A chime sounded, and a voice filtered through the intercom. "Ambassador Sorensen, we have docking clearance on Pad 7A. Your presence is requested in the Grand Assembly Hall at your earliest convenience." Lena allowed herself a small smile. Even now, with Earth on the precipice of joining the galactic community, the pomp and circumstance of diplomatic speak failed to mask the undertone of unease. They were right to be wary. The docking clamps engaged with a shudder, and the hatch yawned open to reveal a gleaming corridor lined with the banners of 100 worlds. At the end, a cluster of alien dignitaries waited, their postures tense beneath a thin veneer of cordiality. "Ambassador Sorensen, I presume." The lead delegate offered a stiff half-bow, his scaly skin reflecting like oil. "I am Prime Counselor Zithkel. The Assembly has convened. If you'll follow me." Lena inclined her head a fraction. "Of course, Prime Counselor. I trust the proceedings will be productive." The alien's eyes narrowed at the subtle jab, and he spun on his heel to lead the way through vaulted halls of glimmering steel and crystalline windows looking out on the infinite void. Everywhere, Lena noted the opulence, the casual excess of societies that had known only peace and plenty for generations, so different from Earth, where even now the scars of invasion burned raw and deep. At last they arrived at the towering doors of the assembly hall, the entry flanked by the hulking forms of armored guards. With a groan of shifting gears, the portal swung inward, revealing a cavernous space dominated by a circular table of polished obsidian. Around it, a motley assortment of beings studied her with gazes ranging from suspicious to nakedly hostile. "The human ambassador has arrived," Zithkel announced, his voice echoing in the sudden hush. "We may begin." Lena strode to the lone empty seat, ignoring how it had been placed at the very edge of the gathering. She would not be cowed by petty slights, not when the fate of her world hung in the balance. "Thank you all for convening this historic assembly," she began, her voice steel. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter, for Earth and for the galaxy. Let us ensure it is a future of cooperation and mutual respect." The alien faces before her remained unmoved, tension crackling in the air. All knew this was a turning point, that the decisions made in this room would shape the course of events for generations. But they had yet to truly grasp the depths of humanity's resolve. They had yet to learn the lessons paid for in human blood. In that moment, Lena felt the weight of her people's hopes and fears settle on her shoulders. She straightened under the burden, her eyes alight with unwavering determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Earth would not bow. They would claim their destiny on their own terms, with all the ferocity and tenacity that defined their species. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: The galaxy would never be the same now that humanity had taken the stage, and Lena would ensure that when the dust settled, Earth still stood tall. Copy retrieved seated. Accusations. The assembly hall hummed with a palpable undercurrent of tension as the delegates shifted restlessly in their seats. At the center of the circular table, a holographic display flickered to life, casting an eerie glow over the proceedings. If there are no objections, we will begin with the formal ratification of the Treaty of Galactic Accession. Prime Counselor Zithkel intoned, his voice carefully neutral. Ambassador Sorensen, as Earth's representative, you have reviewed the terms. Lena inclined her head. I have, Prime Counselor. Earth is prepared to accept the responsibilities and privileges of membership as outlined in the treaty. A ripple of murmurs spread through the gathered dignitaries, a mix of surprise and unease. Many had expected humanity to chafe at the restrictions placed upon new members, to balk at the idea of submitting to galactic law. Zithkel nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. Very well. If all are in agreement, we will proceed with the signing ceremony. But before the counselor could lift his ceremonial pen, a harsh voice sliced through the room. I object. Head swiveled to face the speaker, a hulking reptilian being with mottled green scales and eyes that burned with fury. Lena recognized him instantly. Ambassador Kazarath of the Zorian Empire, the very species that had led the invasion of Earth. On what grounds do you object, Ambassador Kazarath? Zithkel asked, his tone frosty. The Zorian surged to his feet, clawed fingers gouging into the polished table. On the grounds that admitting these savages to our ranks is a mockery of everything the Alliance stands for. Have you all forgotten the atrocities they committed, the worlds they burned? Lena felt a cold fury rise within her, but she kept her expression carefully blank. Ambassador Kazarath, I would remind you that it was the Zorian Empire that launched an unprovoked attack on Earth. We acted in self-defense, nothing more. Kazarath snarled, his scales rippling with rage. Self-defense. Is that what you call the wholesale slaughter of our clutches, the destruction of our nesting worlds? Your kind knows nothing of honor or restraint. You fight with a savagery that has no place among civilized beings. A chorus of shocked whispers filled the chamber, and Lena saw some of the delegates cast uneasy glances in her direction. She had known this moment would come, that Earth's actions during the war would be called into question. But she had not expected it to happen so soon or so publicly. Drawing herself up to her full height, Lena fixed Kazarath with an icy stare. Ambassador, let us speak plainly. When the Zorian Empire attacked Earth, you targeted our cities, our infrastructure, our very way of life. You slaughtered civilians indiscriminately and without mercy. And when we refused to yield, when we fought back with every ounce of strength and ingenuity we possessed, you labeled us savages. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. But what your kind failed to understand is that humanity has a long and bloody history of warfare. We have fought each other for millennia, over land, over resources, over ideologies. And through that crucible, we have learned the true cost of conflict. We have developed rules of engagement, codes of conduct to temper our worst instincts. Lena's eyes flashed with a fierce light. And when your forces descended upon Earth, when you shattered those hard-won norms of civilized warfare, you left us no choice. We showed you the consequences of unbridled aggression, the horror of a war without limits. And we did so not out of cruelty, but out of necessity, to ensure that you would never again threaten our world or our people. Kazarath's scales had paled to a sickly gray, and he seemed to deflate under the weight of Lena's words. Around the table, the other delegates looked on in stunned silence, some nodding slowly in understanding. Earth does not seek conquest or domination, Lena continued, her voice softening. We seek only to take our place among the stars, to forge bonds of friendship and cooperation with all those who would live in peace. But we will not apologize for defending ourselves, nor will we forget the lessons learned in blood and fire. She turned to face the Prime Counselor. Earth is ready to join the Interstellar Alliance, to lend our strength to the cause of galactic stability and prosperity. But we do so as equals, with our sovereignty and our dignity intact. Those are the terms of our membership, and they are non-negotiable. Zithkel's eyes narrowed, but after a long moment, he gave a curt nod. Let the record show that Earth's conditions for accession have been duly noted. In the absence of further objections, we will proceed with the signing. One by one, the delegates pressed their sigils to the holographic treaty until only Lena remained. With a steady hand, she inscribed her name in glowing lines of light, sealing Earth's place among the stars. But as the assembly hall erupted into polite applause, Lena knew that the true challenges lay ahead. The wounds of war were still raw, and the specter of human fury still loomed large in the galactic consciousness. It would take more than words and signatures to forge a lasting peace. Earth had taken its first steps into a larger universe, but the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, and Lena would need every ounce of her skill and determination to navigate the treacherous waters of galactic diplomacy. For in the end, humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their tactics, but their indomitable will to endure, to adapt, to rise from the ashes stronger than before. And it was that spirit that would carry them forward into a future bright with promise and peril alike. The galaxy would never be the same, but Earth would meet whatever challenges lay ahead with the same unwavering resolve that had brought them to this moment. And Lena would be there every step of the way, to ensure that humanity claimed its rightful place among the stars. Reckoning, the signing of the treaty had been a mere formality, a public display of unity that belied the simmering tensions beneath the surface. Now, as Lena followed Prime Counselor Zithkel into a private meeting room, she braced herself for the true test of her diplomatic mettle. The room was sparse and utilitarian, with a simple table and a handful of chairs. But the occupants were anything but ordinary, the leaders of the most powerful factions in the galaxy, the beings who held the fate of worlds in their hands. Zithkel took his seat at the head of the table, his expression inscrutable. Ambassador Sorensen, thank you for joining us. I trust you understand the gravity of this meeting. Lena inclined her head. Of course, Prime Counselor. Earth is committed to finding a path forward, one that benefits all members of the Alliance. A bark of harsh laughter cut through the room, and Lena turned to see a familiar face. Admiral Vaxorin of the Kron Imperium, a hulking figure with a battle-scarred visage. Pretty words, Ambassador, Vaxorin growled. But we all know the truth. Earth is a wild card, a loose cannon that could destabilize the entire galactic order. Your kind has proven themselves to be violent and unpredictable, a threat to everything we hold dear. Lena's eyes flashed with a hint of steel. Admiral, with all due respect, Earth has shown remarkable restraint in the face of unimaginable provocation. We seek only to defend ourselves and our way of life, not to impose our will on others. Restraint. The Admiral's voice was thick with scorn. Is that what you call the annihilation of entire star systems? The use of weapons that even the most depraved among us would shy away from? Lena's jaw tightened, but she kept her tone even. Earth has no desire to revisit the horrors of war, Admiral. But we will not be cowed by threats or intimidation. We have earned our place at this table, through blood and sacrifice and sheer force of will. The room fell silent, the weight of Lena's words hanging heavy in the air. She could feel the gazes of the other leaders upon her, assessing, calculating. It was Zithkel who broke the impasse, his voice cool and measured. No one here denies the valor of Earth's defenders, Ambassador. But you must understand our concerns. The galaxy has enjoyed a fragile peace for centuries, a balance of power that has held the worst of our impulses in check. And now, with humanity's ascension, that balance has been thrown into disarray. Lena leaned forward, her eyes intent. Prime Counselor, Earth has no intention of upsetting the galactic order. But we will not be subjugated, nor will we be relegated to the status of second-class citizens. We demand to be treated as equals, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. A ripple of unease passed through the gathered leaders, and Lena pressed her advantage. You speak of the fragile peace that has reigned for centuries. But what kind of peace is built on the subjugation of entire species, on the denial of their fundamental rights? Earth has learned the hard way that true stability can only be founded on the principles of justice and equality. She paused, letting her words sink in. We are not conquerors, nor are we savages. We are a people who have endured the worst that the universe can throw at us, and emerged stronger for it. And now we stand ready to lend our strength to the cause of a better tomorrow, a future in which all beings can live in harmony and mutual respect. The room was silent for a long moment, the leaders exchanging glances of wary calculation. At last, Zithkel spoke, his voice heavy with resignation. You drive a hard bargain, Ambassador Sorensen. But perhaps you are right. Perhaps it is time for the Alliance to evolve, to embrace a new paradigm of cooperation and equality. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. But understand this. Earth's actions will be watched closely, and any deviation from the norms of civilized conduct will be met with swift and severe consequences. You have made powerful enemies today, Ambassador, and they will not soon forget the humiliation you have dealt them. Lena inclined her head, a faint smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I would expect nothing less, Prime Counselor. Earth has always thrived in the face of adversity, and we will not shrink from the challenges ahead. She rose to her feet, her bearing regal and unbowed. But mark my words, the days of humanity being underestimated are over. We have earned our place among the stars, and we will fight with every ounce of our being to keep it. With that, she turned and strode from the room, leaving the leaders of the galaxy to ponder the implications of Earth's ascension. The path ahead would be fraught with peril, but Lena knew that humanity would face it with the same indomitable spirit that had carried them to the stars. For in the end, Earth's greatest strength lay not in their weapons or their technology, but in the unbreakable bonds of unity and purpose that had forged them into a force to be reckoned with. And as long as they stood together, no power in the universe could stand against them. The galaxy had been put on notice, Earth had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. And Lena would be there every step of the way, to guide her people towards a future bright with promise and possibility. Whispers of dissent. In the days following the fateful meeting, whispers began to spread through the halls of the galactic hub station. Rumors of the humans' unyielding stance, of their refusal to be cowed by the established powers. Some spoke of Ambassador Sorensen's fierce determination, her unwavering commitment to her people's cause. Others muttered of the dangers of underestimating the newcomers, of the folly of provoking a species with such a bloody history. Lena paid little heed to the murmurs and speculation. She had more pressing matters to attend to, as she worked tirelessly to navigate the labyrinthine web of galactic diplomacy. There were treaties to be negotiated, alliances to be forged, and a delicate balance of power to be maintained. But even as she immersed herself in the intricacies of statecraft, Lena could sense the undercurrents of unease that rippled through the station. The older races, those who had long held sway over the galaxy, viewed Earth's ascension with a mixture of trepidation and resentment. They saw in humanity an upstart challenger, a potential threat to their long-held dominance. Some, like the Zorians, nursed old grievances and plotted vengeance for the wounds inflicted during the war. Others, like the Cronians, looked upon Earth's military might with covetous eyes, dreaming of the day when they might harness that power for their own ends. But there were others, too, who saw in Earth's arrival an opportunity. The younger races, those who had long chafed under the yoke of the established order, looked to humanity as a potential ally, a champion for the cause of change and reform. Lena found herself at the center of a maelstrom of competing interests and agendas, as factions vied for her favor and sought to sway her to their cause. She met with delegates from a dozen worlds, each with their own grievances and aspirations, their own visions for the future of the galaxy. There was the ambassador from Kelvar, a spindly, insectoid being who spoke passionately of the need for greater representation for the galaxy's less developed worlds, and the envoy from the Thel Consortium, a sleek, silvery android who argued for the rights of artificial intelligences and the need for a more equitable distribution of resources. Through it all, Lena remained steadfast in her commitment to Earth's interests, even as she sought to build bridges and forge common ground. She knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges and setbacks, that there would be those who sought to undermine her efforts at every turn. But she also knew that Earth could not stand alone, that they would need allies and partners if they were to navigate the treacherous currents of galactic politics. And so she worked tirelessly to build a network of support, to cultivate relationships with those who shared her vision of a more just and equitable future. As the days stretched into weeks, Lena began to see the first glimmers of progress. There were small victories, incremental gains that signaled a shift in the galactic balance of power. A trade agreement here, a security pact there, each one a building block in the foundation of Earth's growing influence. But even as she celebrated these successes, Lena knew that the true test was yet to come. For the established powers would not relinquish their grip on the galaxy easily, and there were those who would stop at nothing to see Earth's ascension thwarted. She could feel the tension building, the sense of an impending confrontation that loomed on the horizon, and she knew that when that moment came, Earth would need to be ready, to stand united and unwavering in the face of whatever challenges lay ahead. For in the end, the fate of the galaxy would be decided not in the halls of diplomacy, but in the crucible of conflict and crisis. And Lena was determined to ensure that when that day came, Earth would emerge triumphant, a shining beacon of hope and resilience in a universe that had too long been shrouded in darkness. The whispers of dissent grew louder with each passing day, the currents of change swirling ever faster. And at the center of it all stood Lena Sorensen, a solitary figure navigating the storm, her eyes fixed firmly on the future, and her heart filled with the unshakable conviction that Earth's destiny lay among the stars. Come what may, she would be ready, a champion for her people, and a force for change in a galaxy that had too long been mired in the ways of the past. For in the end, the only way forward was through the fire, and Lena would not rest until Earth had claimed its rightful place in the cosmos, a shining example of all that humanity could achieve when they stood together as one. The choice. The summons came in the dead of night, a terse message that flickered across the screen of Lena's personal communicator. An emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called, and her presence was required immediately. Lena felt a sense of foreboding as she made her way through the darkened corridors of the hub station, the echoes of her footsteps ringing hollow in the empty halls. She had known that tensions were rising, that the delicate balance of power she had worked so hard to maintain was beginning to fray at the edges. But she had not expected the crisis to come so soon, or to be so sudden in its arrival. As she stepped into the council chamber, Lena was struck by the palpable sense of unease that hung heavy in the air. The representatives of a dozen worlds were gathered around the circular table, their faces etched with worry and tension. At the head of the table sat Prime Counselor Zithkel, his expression grim and unyielding. "Ambassador Sorensen," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness of the room. "Thank you for joining us at such short notice." Lena inclined her head, taking her seat at the table. "Of course, Prime Counselor. What is the nature of this emergency?" Zithkel's eyes flashed with a hint of steel. "I'm afraid the situation is grave, Ambassador. In the past few hours, we have received reports of a series of attacks on our outlying colonies. Several settlements have been razed to the ground, their populations slaughtered without mercy." A ripple of shock and horror passed through the assembled delegates, and Lena felt a chill run down her spine. "Who is responsible for these atrocities?" she asked, her voice tight with anger. "We do not know for certain," Zithkel admitted, "but the evidence points to a rogue faction within the Zorian Empire, a group that has long opposed Earth's inclusion in the Alliance." Lena's eyes narrowed. The Zorians. But why would they risk open war, after all that has happened? Because they see Earth as a threat, Admiral Vaxorin growled, his battle-scarred face twisted with rage. They fear your strength, your technology, your very existence. They will stop at nothing to see you brought low, to see your world reduced to ashes once more. Lena felt a surge of anger and defiance rise within her. Earth will not be intimidated, she said, her voice ringing with conviction. We have faced worse threats than this, and emerged stronger for it. If the Zorians seek war, then they shall have it, and they shall rue the day they dared to cross us. But even as the words left her lips, Lena knew that war was not the answer. She had seen the horrors of conflict firsthand, had witnessed the devastation and suffering that it wrought. And she knew that if the galaxy was to have any hope of a better future, then the cycle of violence and retribution must be broken. No, she said, her voice softer now. There must be another way. We cannot let this crisis tear the Alliance apart, not when we have come so far, not when there is so much still to be done. Zithkel's expression was unreadable. What do you propose, Ambassador? Lena took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. I propose a summit, a gathering of all the races of the Alliance. Let us come together in the spirit of peace and cooperation to address our differences and find common ground. Let us show the galaxy that there is a better way, a path that leads to unity and progress, rather than division and strife. There was a moment of stunned silence as the delegates absorbed the audacity of Lena's proposal. Some looked skeptical, others intrigued, but all were aware of the weight of the moment, of the significance of the choice that lay before them. You ask much, Ambassador Sorensen, Zithkel said at last. To bring together such disparate factions, to set aside centuries of mistrust and animosity, it will not be an easy task. No, Lena agreed, but it is a necessary one. For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by fear and suspicion, by the belief that might makes right. If we are to build a better future, then we must learn to trust one another, to work together towards a common goal. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room, taking in the faces of the assembled delegates. Earth is ready to do its part. We are prepared to host the summit, to provide a neutral ground where all races can come together in the spirit of peace. But we cannot do this alone. We need the support of the Alliance, the commitment of every world and every species to the cause of unity and cooperation. For a long moment, the room was silent, the weight of Lena's words hanging heavy in the air. And then, slowly at first, but with growing momentum, the delegates began to nod, to murmur their assent. Very well, Zithkel said, his voice heavy with resignation. Let it be known that the Galactic Alliance stands with Earth in this endeavor. The summit will be held, and all races will be invited to attend. May the stars guide us to a brighter future, one in which all beings can live in harmony and peace. Lena felt a surge of relief and triumph, even as she knew that the true challenge was yet to come. The summit would be a crucible, a test of Earth's resolve and diplomacy, and of the strength of the bonds that held the Alliance together. But she was ready to face whatever trials lay ahead, ready to fight for the vision of a better galaxy that she held in her heart. And she knew that Earth would stand with her, united and unbreakable, a shining beacon of hope in a universe that had too long been shrouded in darkness. The choice had been made, the die cast, and as Lena stepped out into the corridor, her head held high and her heart filled with determination, she knew that the future of the galaxy would be shaped by the choices that were yet to come, by the courage and conviction of those who dared to dream of a better tomorrow. New dawn. The summit was a sight to behold, a gathering of beings from every corner of the galaxy, united in a common purpose. Representatives from 100 worlds converged on Earth, filling the great halls and chambers of the newly constructed Unity Center with a riot of color and sound. Lena stood at the heart of it all, a calm and commanding presence amidst the chaos. She had worked tirelessly in the weeks leading up to the summit, reaching out to every faction and every leader, seeking to build bridges and forge alliances wherever she could. It had not been an easy task. The wounds of the past ran deep, and there were many who viewed Earth with suspicion and mistrust. But Lena had persevered, driven by an unshakable belief in the power of diplomacy and the potential for a better future. And now, as she looked out over the gathered delegates, she felt a sense of hope and possibility that she had never known before. Here, in this moment, the galaxy stood on the brink of a new era, a time of peace and cooperation that had seemed impossible only a short time ago. But even as she savored the triumph of the moment, Lena knew that the true work was only just beginning. The summit was a first step, a chance to lay the groundwork for a lasting peace. But it would take more than words and gestures to heal the rifts that had torn the galaxy apart for so long. As the opening ceremonies gave way to the hard work of negotiation and compromise, Lena found herself at the center of a maelstrom of competing interests and agendas. There were those who sought to use the summit as a means to advance their own power and influence, to secure concessions and advantages that would benefit their own worlds and peoples. But there were others, too, who saw in the summit a chance for something more, an opportunity to build a new and better galaxy, one in which all beings could live in harmony and mutual respect. And it was to these voices that Lena lent her support, working tirelessly to forge a consensus that would endure long after the summit had ended. Day after day, she met with delegates and dignitaries, hammering out agreements and treaties, seeking to find common ground where none had existed before. And slowly, painfully, progress began to take shape. There were setbacks and challenges, moments when it seemed that the fragile peace would shatter under the weight of ancient grudges and new rivalries. But through it all, Lena remained steadfast, a beacon of hope and determination in a galaxy that had too long been shrouded in darkness. And as the summit drew to a close, as the delegates began to depart for their own worlds and peoples, Lena knew that something profound had changed. The galaxy would never be the same, not after the events of the past weeks and months. Earth had taken its place among the great powers of the universe, a shining example of what humanity could achieve when it stood together as one. And in doing so, they had helped to usher in a new era of peace and cooperation, a time in which the old hatreds and divisions could finally begin to heal. But even as she celebrated the triumph of the moment, Lena knew that the journey was far from over. There would be challenges and trials ahead, new threats and dangers that would test the strength and resolve of the fragile peace they had forged. And yet, as she looked out over the shimmering lights of the Unity Center, as she felt the weight of the galaxy's hopes and dreams resting on her shoulders, Lena knew that she was ready. Ready to face whatever the future might bring, ready to fight for the vision of a better tomorrow that she held in her heart. For she was Lena Sorensen, ambassador of Earth and champion of the human spirit, and she would not rest until the galaxy was free from the tyranny of war and oppression, until every being could live in peace and dignity, secure in the knowledge that they were part of something greater than themselves. The summit was over, but the work had only just begun. And as Lena stepped out into the bright light of a new dawn, she knew that the future was hers to shape, hers to mold in the image of her dreams. The galaxy had changed, but so too had humanity. They had proven themselves to be more than mere upstarts or savages, more than the sum of their bloody past. They had shown that they could be leaders and visionaries, builders and dreamers, warriors and peacemakers all at once. And as long as they held fast to that truth, as long as they remembered the lessons of the past and the promise of the future, then there was nothing they could not achieve, no heights to which they could not ascend. The new dawn had arrived, and with it, a new hope for the galaxy and for all who called it home. And Lena Sorensen would be there to greet it, ready to lead her people and her galaxy into a brighter tomorrow, one step at a time.